Hey everybody, this is Munson Steed, and welcome to A Seat at the Table, where we bring influential, educational, strengthening the community. That is, putting strength in the community so that you have access to information that will change your life. I'm proud of this young brother. He believes in the community. He has a mission. It's all about empowerment. Welcome everybody to A Seat at the Table. Omari Hall. How are you, Omari?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today.
You know, when you think about a seat at the table and we're talking about home ownership, can you describe why it's important, number one, and then your role with you and your company, your mission, number two?
Yeah. So especially when I'm thinking about Black and Brown communities, underrepresented communities, home ownership is when you think about the wealth gap and you think about how generational wealth is accumulated in these communities, home ownership and the passing down of property and real estate is really the key. And it's one of the reasons why that wealth gap exists between Black and Brown communities and other communities, is because historically Black and Brown folks have not had the same opportunities to be homeowners that other Americans have. So this is a really important and empowering lesson that we want to make sure that all of our communities understand really the true power of home ownership.
Cool.
And as far as what we do at GreenPath, so GreenPath is a financial nonprofit. We focus on education and resources. Our goal is to help folks live financially empowered lives. And specifically, my work is on the education team, and I really am focusing on this idea, this question: how might we take some of our existing resources and information and products and services and make them more accessible and more relevant to Black and Brown communities?
You know, when you think about it, what are the kind of current challenges related to housing that you see the most for Black people?
Yeah, housing is in most cases the biggest monthly budget item on a person's monthly budget. And it's only one aspect of the financial picture. And 2020 is destined to be filled with uncertainty due to inflation and supply chain problems, especially with what's going on with COVID and the uncertainty in Ukraine. So just like the supply chain issues, housing expenses, total debt, and risk of failure causes a chain reaction and impact as well. Many people don't believe they have a housing issue, but the issue with credit card debt, but instead an issue with credit card debt. But honestly, the failure in one can cause issues and cause a lot of folks to fall behind and impact other areas in their household budget, specifically housing, medical needs, food insecurity, and just really that instability in the budget in general can lead to what eventually becomes a housing issue. Another common concern that we're hearing from the housing counselors is that the costs have increased for everything from groceries to gas, just the cost of living in general. And these rising prices put pressure on folks that are financing homes. Analysts predict that prices will begin to drop around, hopefully before the year's end. But 56% of GreenPath's callers with GreenPath or 995 HOPE were still coping with the pandemic-related hardships, whether that be a reduction of income, unemployment, or just a lack of savings or a lack of a financial plan in case of an emergency. So all of these things really coalesce into issues with maintaining the home buyer status, and also it really coalesced in causing it to be very difficult to prepare for home ownership, in addition to all of the systemic inequities that exist on that route to home ownership. Does that make sense?
You know, I'm tracking with you because you're smart and intelligent, but for those that really may not understand, budgeting, when you think of budgeting and writing it down, why is it important to think about your household budget and really put it in front of your face so that you can do what?
I mean, I think that in general, one of the things that we tend to underestimate, and not just in Black communities in general. I think that most folks don't have a really good idea of how much money they're spending and where exactly their money is going. Like I talked about before, in most cases, that housing expense is going to be the largest single payment that you make each month. So it's important to have that in front of you so you know where that money is going. But in addition to that, just the everyday expenses, right? The nickel and dime expenses, going to the gas station, going to Starbucks, dining out for lunch, ordering Uber Eats or Grubhub when you get home. All of these small expenses that don't equate to a single bill, or necessarily that might not be the same size as your house note or your car note or your insurances or whatever. Those things add up in a significant amount, such that they end up usually being every bit as expensive as your housing payment, whether it be rent or mortgage. And half the time we don't even notice. We don't even know what those expenses are because they go in and out really quickly. And it's not a thing that comes in the form of a bill every month, so it's harder for us to keep track. So I say all that to say that the usefulness of writing down your expenses, daily tracking of your expenses, can really help you have visibility on where that money is going. And as a result, it can help you make behavior changes that may be necessary to keep yourself on track. You follow me?
I do. And so for that person who really, I want to stop renting,
Mm-hmm.
I want to get on the path, the green path, I guess, or on the hopeful path. Really, how can they begin that? Where can they start with you guys? How can they start with your organization to get on the path to home ownership?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm hearing from you. What are some of the things that we can help clients with as they get ready for home ownership? Well, the first thing that we want you to do is give us a call. Like we said, we are a nonprofit organization with a strong sense of empathy and a holistic view of counseling. So we want to really get an understanding of what your goals are. And if those goals are home ownership, we can definitely help you get into the right mindset to prepare for that journey. Like we talked about before, the housing budget requires a lot of planning and honest discussion with your family about your priorities and your spending habits. So you want to review your income. We'll create a budget with you. We can examine your spending habits and create an action plan. And when we think of a budget, we want to think of your spending plan as a roadmap, right? We want to assess your monthly income against your current expenses. Has your income increased or decreased or remained steady? All those things are going to be important to assess your situation. Utilizing a budget worksheet to track your monthly income and your expenses, like we talked about before. And when I say expenses, I don't just mean your bills. I mean everything: dining out, going to the grocery store, etc. And then using that money that comes in each month to be sure to take care of essentials such as housing, medicine, food, childcare, transportation, and take a really good hard look at your spending, making sure that you're not spending more than you earn, and making sure that you recognize if your expenses have changed given the rising cost of the price of living. And all of those things are going to give us perspective on what it is that you, or where you are, and if you're really ready to truly understand the cost of home ownership, because it's not going to be just your mortgage payment, right? There's also the utilities, there's the cost of upkeep. All of these things really pay a really, really valuable, they're a really big part of the overall expense of home ownership.
So, there are those who can't even move toward home ownership and they're already behind. And they're looking for a lifeline, somebody to share and give them some options before their children have already anxiety from COVID. But now you've got the anxiety that you could possibly not have any help. What can we do or say, or what should people know as it relates to help and availability, as it relates to rent and housing payments?
Yeah, this is tough. This is always a difficult call to make as someone who's experiencing this, and sometimes a difficult call to counsel as well, because in many cases, the answers are maybe not quite as straightforward as pay this bill and your problem is solved. In many cases, we're just doing the best that we can with the information that we have and with the expenses that we have. And sometimes our situations get to the point where we simply cannot keep it up and we need assistance. The good news is there is assistance available in many states. Most states are slowly receiving American Rescue Plan Act funds from the Homeowner Assistance Fund. And that can help you if you're falling behind on your mortgage or other housing related expenses due to COVID. In the case of rental, being behind on your rental expenses, most areas, most counties have a local housing authority, and many of these housing authorities will have programming and potential opportunities for help and emergency rental assistance. Our counselors at GreenPath often supply referrals for assistance with food insecurity or employment services and other local supportive services. And also contact your lenders in the case of if you're behind on your mortgage or you're behind on a credit card, and even landlords in some cases. Having an honest conversation about available hardship options might sound like a wasted effort, but you'd be surprised how oftentimes there are built-in resources to help you out. We're all trying to deal with these crises together. And if you're renting, contact your landlord as soon as possible and explain your situation along with the proposed solution. Some of those options could be deferring your payment, or rather deferring an unpaid portion of rent into a later specific date, or proposing a repayment plan, asking for an adjustment of the lease terms based on a recent hardship, applying for emergency rental assistance, maybe with one of those housing authorities we talked about, or offering to work off some or all of the unpaid rent. This is not going to be a slam dunk for every situation, but many landlords understand the situation and are also trying to make it. So having an opportunity to work together to find a solution may be a better option than no payment at all. You know what I mean?
I do. It brings me just debt in general. How should we be looking at debt? Just letting it grow? What's a strategy to, pay down a debt? What are some practices that will help people who really just want some insight on how to approach my debt right about now?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the first issue is that in many cases, and I'm sure we all have an experience like this, most of us are really not prepared for managing money at all as we enter adulthood. It's in many cases not a thing that's taught in school. It's not a thing that really our parents don't always teach us. They don't always talk to us about this. And again, not their fault. We all are just trying to do the best with all the information that we have. So as a result, falling into debt is much easier to do than you might imagine. The good news is there are always strategies to help you get a hold of it. The first step is to know how much you owe. Write down the total amount of all your debts, monthly payments, interest rates, and due dates. Try to limit your credit card usage and curb the discretionary spending as much as possible. And again, I know that this is easier said than done, especially in difficult times like these, but starting with recognizing your total amount might seem overwhelming, but in many cases, the visibility of knowing exactly what the situation is can help you have peace of mind and make a decision towards changing that situation, changing that outcome. Many people supplement their income with extra hours or a second job or a side hustle or something to help you manage your budget. Again, the budget is really a matter of mathematics, what's coming in versus what's going out. And if you can't decrease what you're spending, maybe look at ways to increase what you're bringing in. Again, I always have to say, I recognize that this is easier said than done, but if this is a possibility for you, absolutely something you should take advantage of. If you're paying down student loans, although the Biden administration recently extended the student loan payment pause through May, borrowers should still make room in your budget now to try to take advantage of paying some of those debts off. And choose a debt payoff strategies that works for your situation. So maybe the Snowball Method, which is paying off the smaller debts first, and then using the amount that you were paying on that small debt even though it's paid off, to then add to the next debt. So say you had a debt that you were paying $25 a month on. Once that's paid off, you take that $25 and now add it to what you were already paying on your next bill, so you can pay that off even faster. Or the avalanche method, which is basically the opposite of that, paying the debt with the highest interest rate first. Many of the people that we speak to at GreenPath, particularly, they consider a debt management program, which is a really, really useful tool if you have unsecured debt, unsecured credit card debt in particular. And what we can do is we can help you pay off that debt within a 3 to 5 year window. We can work with your creditors to bring the accounts current, lower the interest rate, eliminate fees, and put together a payment plan that can combine all of those debts into one payment plan and pay them all off over the course of like a 3 to 5 year window. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm cool with it. I think that you explained it very. You got a snowball, you got an avalanche.
Yep.
You can start with the small if you need to just take steps, but start someplace. I think
Absolutely.
the other thing is just honesty and transparency, so that your truth is in front of you. When you said budgeting, I think I took that away. Like, get it in front of you so you can get it. And then the thing about your organization is you don't have to be alone.
No.
You do have counselors to walk you through all of these processes, so that many of the local organizations you may not know, but at least at 955 Hope, they already know. So I think that that's why we're having this conversation, so our community doesn't feel that they don't have any care and concern, when GreenPath and 955 Hope are really dedicated to educating the community on the possibility, but also helping the community, knowing that this has been a very tough time and there is a need for support and what I call a kind of safety belt to put on, so that we don't just fall out in the streets. Our kids aren't traumatized. So I love that. So in doing what you're doing, how have you grown in your insight of understanding finances, given that you're a young Black man? What have you been able to take away from just even being in your position?
A lot. I can tell you right away. I was blessed in that I had some experiences coming out of college where I worked in the financial sector. I worked in the mortgage industry for a while before I started here at GreenPath. But I can tell you before that, and I'm sure my experience reflects that of many other young Black and brown men and women, where I didn't have a lot of experience with understanding money. It was definitely not something that was taught in school. My dad, I was very close to my father, and he helped me as much as he could. But for him, that was just him sending me a spreadsheet that had a budget on there, and I was like, all right, here, you go figure out the rest of it from here, which was better than nothing. But there's some hard lessons that you have to learn. And working at GreenPath really helped me to understand credit in particular. It really helped me to understand the value of tracking your expenses. And I stress that with the clients that I used to work with, especially those of us in the younger generation, the millennials and younger, because we have a lifestyle where everything is a subscription, everything is quick, fast, dining out, paying for your food delivery. All those things are very convenient. And it's easy for us to not notice how much they're costing us over the course of a month. But if you go back and really take a look at your bank account, take a look at your transactions, and you notice that over the course of the month, you might have paid $1,000 for rent, but you paid $900 in just miscellaneous expenses, that'll really straighten you up, and you'll recognize, oh, wow. One, there's more money to go around than I thought, because I'm spending so much on this other stuff. And two, the value of recognizing that, hey, I can do these things if I want, but I just have to make sure I plan for them so that I'm not coming up short for the things that are the priorities, like my utility bills, your mortgage, etc. So that was a very, very useful lesson for me that GreenPath helped me to understand a lot sooner, and hopefully permanently. But like you said, I'm still young. I'm still making mistakes every now and then. It's easier to tell somebody else about their situation than looking at your own sometimes.
When you think about financial education, parent, what are you going to do differently when you think about if you
Mm.
have, you have kids, or even, I wouldn't even say your kids. It's like when you're hanging out and you're going over and you're having a party on Belle Isle for some young graduates from high school, and you say, what up, though? And then you tell them you graduate from high school. Here's what's important.
Where you learn that? Where you learn that what up though from? You
Yeah, I've been corners in your city, young man. I'm not talking about the D. I'm in the D. Very, 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 very different. I know the difference between Belle Isle and where Jefferson is.
oh yeah.
I know the east side from the west side.
Yeah, no, you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Uh,
my grandparents used to live in Detroit, and actually have a home in Lansing now too.
okay,
So I've been in that city all my life. So it's not a new town. It's one of my favorite. I do have favorites.
there you go.
Obviously Atlanta, and I think just because I graduated from Morehouse, and then obviously Detroit's one of my favorite. And right now I'm in Chicago and live in Chicago with my wife. So those are my favorite Black towns. I think they're real Black. There's an expectation of Black love, and that's on all. We should win together. We should benefit together. We should recognize each other. We can be artistic together. We can trust each other. So I think and we just be real talk. So, I understand and have a great time when I go, with the expectation that you do. The Black people can succeed even as the city gets, the necessary attention that it had. But, I think everybody was robbing the city, and it wasn't Black people. So, that's just the reality of where I was in that conversation about the D. When you were giving this speech at Belle Isle, what are the three things that you would tell young people that were graduating from high school, and maybe even Wayne State, that your dad didn't share with you in that spreadsheet? What are the three things that you tell them about finances and a future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm off the top of my head. Here's what I would say. The first one would be don't overthink your credit score. And I don't mean that it's not important. It is very important. But what I mean by that is that sometimes I think we are looking for a quick, easy fix to improve our credit. In my experience, that is pretty uncommon. Credit is a slow burn. It's a slow process to improve. And it's really a matter of how good are you at borrowing and repaying the bank's money? It's simple as that, right? In order to build credit, you have to use credit, and continuing to pay down your bills or pay down those accounts as much as you can while still using them. That balance of keeping your balances low while also using the credit cards consistently is, in general, I know some people may disagree with me on this, but in general, that's the main way to improve your credit. I wouldn't worry about any sort of quick fixes or, credit repair. I think people waste a lot of money in doing stuff like that when there are strategies that they can employ on their own to get those results. So don't overthink your credit score, but still recognize that it's important. Two, I would definitely say the budgeting piece, tracking your expenses on a daily basis. I mean, that's really, really crucial, especially for young folks. Be aware of your subscriptions, be aware of how much money you're spending on dining out, your coffee in the morning, your gas station expenses, whatever. Those daily nickel and dime expenses, keeping an eye on those and keeping those under control are going to really go a long way. And the third thing I would say, and again, I know we're talking a lot about home ownership, but I would also encourage young people to have grace and have empathy for yourself and recognize that if you're not ready for home ownership, that's okay, right? It's hard. That's a harder process maybe than when our parents bought their homes at 25 and it cost them $30,000. That's just not the case anymore, right? Home ownership is an expensive journey. It's not the answer for everyone. And if you don't feel like home ownership is realistic for you, that's okay. That does not mean that you're not doing well. It doesn't mean that you don't have your stuff together. I would definitely just encourage you to give yourself grace and understand that if it's something that you want, you can work at it. It might take a little longer, but it's not going to be the end all be all when it comes to proving yourself as an independent, financially responsible adult. You follow me?
I do, and for me, I always give when I give a financial education. I tell people lead with goals, and a budget is basically a goal. You can get it, you can get close to it, and not be there. If you really want to be successful, even before I say it, get used to saving money. If you get used to saving money, you kind of get used to budget. Kind of goes in the same idea. Savings means that you set some targets. I want to save. So even before you get to the house, have a savings. That way you got a rainy day fund. You got a something happened I didn't expect fund. And I think that those things are really key for young people. Save money. Enjoy saving money. The other thing is life comes with sacrifice. At the end of the day, you want to have sacrifice financial behavior. So don't always order cheese on a cheeseburger if it costs $1. Keep some cheese in the refrigerator and order that out of home burger for whatever it costs, but put a little cheese from your own refrigerator. Every now and then, make a tuna fish sandwich and take it to work. Because we got it, that sacrifice will keep more money in your pocket. The idea should be see it. The other thing is work not to do invisible things. And so for me, financially, it really pays to actually say, you know what? I have a $50 day budget. I don't use credit cards. I use cash. And so I spend what I can see. If it's not in my pocket, it's not there. And I think the thing is, you get out of the habit of being free fall. So sacrifice is key, savings is key, and definitely making a part where you talk to yourself and set a goal. You don't have to set a goal for home ownership, but you do have to set a goal to understand that that down payment is going to come from the savings and the sacrifice that you do each and every day.
With you. I agree 100%.
All right, we're 100%. This has been a seat at the table. I've been hanging out with my main man, Omari from the D, and we really appreciate you, Omari, giving us insight for both the 99955 Hope and, of course, GreenPath. It's been a phenomenal experience for us, and we appreciate you coming on a seat at the table here at Rolling Out.
Thank you. I appreciate it.